be it resolved.
Oh, viewers, to be it resolved. Well, the four of us are very happy that you've joined us today for our debate. We're going to be debating the proposition, be it resolved, that single use plastic water bottles should be banned. I shall be arguing for this position. My name is Andrew Wood, and my partner on this side of the debate is Mario Karakides. Mario? Okay, and arguing against this proposition, plastic single-use water bottles should not be banned, will be Al Brown, Al, and Sarab Sandu. Sarab. Okay, so let's just do the caveat at the beginning here that the views we are about to express may or may not reflect our actual views. So that's something to keep in mind. We're here to play the debate game, but we're deadly serious too. At least this side of the debate is deadly serious because I am going to launch in right now with my arguments. And you know what? It is the most obvious thing in the world that single-use plastic water bottles should be banned. I don't understand how you know, I shall be interested to hear what the opposition comes up with. But we know that these things are underfoot. We can't go outside without dodging these plastic water bottles along the ditch. And they create so much waste, just so many billions of bottles just everywhere and always, you know, all over the world. The whole thing is a scam to begin with. I mean, it's not like we need single-use plastic water bottles. At least here in Canada, where we live, the water that comes out of the tap is perfectly fine for all of those uses. And so, even in places where the water is not so good, and I've lived in China, and you don't drink tap water in China. But what you do is you have the huge water jugs that you might lug up 7 flights of stairs to get to your apartment to. But that's what you use, and it's not the single-use bottles at all. Now, before I pass my speaking along to the next person, let me just point to the plight in the oceans, because that's really where our argument lies, because the plastic does get into the oceans everywhere and always. Microplastics, they're a huge problem, equal to, if not just as bad as climate change. And we are going to pay a price, a terrible price, for the plastics that we use. And so single-use plastic water bottles should be banned. Okay, I'm going to pass the word along to Mr. Brown. Al?
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. I'm speaking against the ban on single-use plastic water bottles for a very specific reason. The system, like simply banning plastic water bottles like this, is like a parent taking a toy away from a spoiled child because they're behaving badly. And this is all about people behaving badly. They're tossing their plastic water bottles out of the car. You know, even during the pandemic, they're throwing their masks on the street. The problem here, as I see it, is the attitude of people towards the whole idea of conservation, responsibility in the use of these products, and ensuring they don't end up in the oceans and the trash bins too. Now, this is a very unique problem to our attitude, to our society of today, because we have grown up in an environment where the external costs, many of the external costs that go into the creation of our world today are not counted. But many of the costs of keeping the goods just aren't there. You know, back 50 years ago, pop bottles and drinks all came in glass bottles. And you know what? There was a deposit on them. You had to take them back to the store. And the deposit wasn't small. It was 20%, therefore, of the price of the drink. If you bought a 10-cent bottle of Coca-Cola, there was a 2-cent deposit charge on it, and you had to take the bottles back. Where we started to change was back in the 1970s. We went to this disposal. Initially, there was a recycle movement, but that has all seemed to be lost, except in one way. For example, in Canada, we have a process for recycling bottles, beer bottles, for example. And you do not see beer bottles lying around on the street. You don't see them out in the oceans. Well, if they were, they'd probably sink to the bottom and we wouldn't see them anyways. But the bottom line is that we have a policy that provides for the external cost of keeping control of glass bottles, particularly beer bottles. And there's no reason why we can't have something to do for plastic bottles. If, for example, there was a recycling charge on every plastic bottle that was sold, and it would have to be fairly high because of the plastic water bottles are very, very cheap, we would find that personally people would be more aware of the problem and they wouldn't waste their bottles. The issue right now is we still live in a throwaway society where everybody does not take responsibility for it. Banning plastic water bottles just doesn't change that mindset. We will stop throwing, we won't have plastic water bottles to throw around, but we'll throw everything else because we can. And there's no price to be paid. That is my position.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for those cogent arguments. And now passing back to the pro side of the equation, Mario Karakidis.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. And I agree actually with Al Brown. And I do believe that Al has hit it right on the nose. The problem is not the actual plastic itself, it's human behavior. And that alone supports our argument that human behavior is what we're discussing here. We are discussing the regulation of whether or not to impose these kind of restrictions on plastic. We know that it's environmentally unfriendly. We know that human beings are going to be sometimes careless in their social graces towards other people, and they're going to litter, they're going to dispose things without really recycling or really looking at the effect that their behavior has on the environment. But the question always comes back down to the age-old argument, don't tell me what to do. And the government is basically doing that. The problem is, folks, is that here's the thing. If there is no entity that is representing the whole, and meaning the majority of the population, then we have anarchy. And the problem with that is that many times those who are the ones that are going to go against the norms will get away with everything. So the littering will happen more. The environment will suffer more. The plastic bottles will be in our faces, not only in our feet. And every time we go in to eat fish or whatever it is, plastic tends to leach over time in water. If it's in the oceans, it tends to leach. So we are getting those microplastics in our food supply. But without having some kind of regulation to prevent that from happening, then it's a free-for-all. And we've seen societal free-falls and how they play out. And folks, it doesn't work out well. I would love to see a society where we don't have regulations, but it is also something that people have to own up to their responsibilities for the other. And unfortunately, that doesn't really happen. We see it, as Al Brown said, very much with the masks thrown all over the place with the COVID masks. And these are possible diseased products. And yet people are discarding them as if they're just, who cares? Who cares if Mario steps on it? And folks, that is where the problem lies in. Regulation is necessary. It's necessary for little plastics. It's necessary for plastic bottles until we change as people to be considerate with one another.
Okay, thank you very much, Mario. Okay, let's give Sarab the word now. Sarab, arguing against the motion.
Yes, and welcome all to this debate. And all I can say is, how did plastic start? It started off after the Second World War. They had a lot of plastics being used, and the plastics being used, and they didn't know what to do with it. They put it into the civilian side, and say they started making plastics for everything. Now, if you look at it, it's when you have a single-use plastic as a wrapper or bottles, they actually serve a purpose. If you change it to anything else, it will cost more. Now, even your food wrapping and everything which we have, the single sheet plastic, it extends the food life to by at least 20 days. Now, if you didn't have that, you have a lot of food wastage. And also, at this moment, we are using a lot just to make the plastic bottles. We use about 28 million barrels of oil in the United States alone in 1 year's consumption. So that means we are converting oil. Now, if you didn't use plastic, you'll require more fuel to transport glass bottles and other stuff. And the only way you can change this is by behavior, as you say. And in India, they are doing a wonderful thing. One guy has made his whole house with plastic bottles. He takes plastic bottles, compresses them into blocks, and uses that building blocks to make a house. The entire house is made. He's got 1 million bottles in one house. So if everybody starts using that, instead of throwing it outside in the ocean, where Mario says you have all these microscopic things coming, it'll help. But to ban it would mean extra cost. And the only thing is you could change our behavior pattern of recycling it into something more useful. That way we can have the cost part, and also we have the conservation part where we're not destroying the planet by plastics. We're using it into a block which will last. The plastic will last for many years.
Okay, well, thank you, Sarab. Okay, we've all finished our constructive arguments. We're going to have a few minutes now, just of a free-for-all, and I'll start it off. And it seems to me, Mario, you can, I don't know if you concur, that our opponents here have already conceded a part of our argument. Because what I heard very, very clearly was that plastic bottles, yes, are indeed a problem. And what Al was trying to do was to change the problem around a little bit. So, okay, plastic bottles are a problem, but we need to recover the cost of them.
No, I don't agree with you, Andrew. My view is that if we had a deposit on these plastic bottles, the use of them would change, because people, firstly, they would not just discard them on the street. In my neighborhood, I've seen places where young kids have been, and you see discarded plastic water bottles there. If there was, say, a deposit of even a dime on one of these things, there'd be somebody coming around, maybe a garbage picker, and they pick them all up. There are people like that around that go around, they collect all these bottles and they turn them in. And if not the kids, then them. The point of the matter is that, and Sarab has hit also the point on the head, our society is based very largely on the efficient use of resources, with plastics being much better to use for some things, particularly disposable items, things where the weight of the replacement, the glass bottle, is much greater than the actual product.
Okay, Al, I can't allow you to make another speech now. Al, you're making another speech now.
One way to do that
is
ensure that the recycling of these plastic bottles works.
Yeah, Al, we're in this part right now. We don't want any long speeches.
This is like turning out to be a Donald Trump debate.
Out here. Al is, clearly Al is arguing speciously at this point.
Speciously.
I love the fact that Al got into it. Quite honestly, I like the fact that he's duking it out and trying to make a speech and trying to monopolize the time, but it doesn't change the fact that he agreed with us that something needs to change. And that is where the problem lies, folks. Now, you can consider putting in a 10-cent dime. Good luck with that as a deposit thing, because most people already are having issues with returning things back to get deposits. If it was such an effective thing, it would have stayed on well beyond the 70s and whatever. And yeah, okay, I agree with glass recycling and all that we do it. But here's the thing: we have recycling bins that we put outside our house every week to pick up. It hasn't changed the problem, the issue yet. Okay, human behavior is such that the argument isn't whether they're going to throw it out the door. Human behavior is, don't tell me what to do. That is where it falls down on.
That's where we need
I
to
agree with that. That's why you put a deposit on things.
That's
say,
why you
fine,
ban it.
Your choice whether you use this or not. Rationally, if you use this thing and you throw it on the ground, you're throwing away money.
Well,
Yeah.
one way of saying it is, if you don't put a deposit, you have free raw material to construct a house, pavements, anything else where you're using other materials. You can use this, which is going to last for 1,000 years.
As long as that
Yeah.
They're out
tsunami
of the
doesn't hit,
ecological
as long as that
system.
tsunami doesn't hit your guy in India.
Yeah, you know what? We're losing the focus of this debate. You're making a good point, Al. I concede your point. I mean, if we could recover some of these costs, and Saurabh, I have no doubt that there are possible construction uses for these things. But the fact of the matter is that millions and billions of these do go into our water systems. They just do. And they are polluting our oceans to such an extent that the plankton are taking up these microplastics, the bottom of the food chain that all the other forms rely on for the building blocks of life. And you know what? We're playing with fire when we do that. When you put these microplastics in the environment, and one way of cutting down drastically on these microplastics is going to be banning the things that need to be banned. And the first among these is the
You're treating people like spoiled children and taking away their toys because they're bad. These are recyclable. That's what we have to do, is we have to turn these. This is a single-use bottle. This is single use for me. I could throw it in the trash bin, but I don't, because I can get a dime back, which cuts down my cost of my next beer.
Al, when that glass finally reaches the end of its useful life, it is not going to break down into microscopic little particles that will pollute the tiny animals of the sea upon which all of us depend.
I agree.
I think they'll turn into diamonds.
Yeah, okay. So Rob, I'm glad you spoke up. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to the wrap up part. So let's give ourselves a minute to make our final points. We'll start with you, Saurabh. 1 minute. What would you like to leave us with?
Yeah, I'm only saying that if you ban it now, because we are so much ahead, forget about what's happening in the ocean now. It's already taken place. That's already there. I think of how to remove that pollutant out of the system. But these bottles, they can be, instead of throwing it in the ocean, use it to make something else. Nowadays in Canada also, you get some people selling water bottles which was previously recycled from plastic. So that's a good first step. They're taking the plastic bottles, remelting them and making them plastic again. And they're also making small chips out of that and making other stuff. So if they can recycle it and so it doesn't go to the ocean. So the only thing is the cost part and how to.
Okay, thank you, Saurabh. Thank you. Your point of view is clear. Mario, can we have your summary, please?
Absolutely. What Al is arguing and what Saurabh is arguing, there is a point to that. I will concede that they do have a point, but the point that they have, which I love, is that they're arguing the same thing we're arguing, which is basically regulation. Okay, whether it is a deposit or whether there is a government law that states that you can't throw away things, it's still regulation of some kind. And it's going to be either market regulated, where the manufacturers are putting the deposit on, or it's government regulated, where the government imposes that fee on somebody through either taxation or through the deposit. One way or another, it's regulation. And that is the objection. If we really look at the core of this argument, again, I'm going to repeat it. It's don't tell me what to do. That is the core of all the arguments of the little children fighting the adults and saying, don't tell me that I can't throw things out the way I want to, out my window, out the door, no matter what. I just want to be free from government.
Okay.
No, folks, it doesn't
No.
work. It has to be
Oh.
banned. We have to have
Thank you.
regulations.
Okay, Al, one more minute.
I have to disagree with Mario. Yes, this issue is on regulation, but the debate is specifically whether plastic bottles should be banned. And we disagree with that because it is plastic water bottles are an efficient way of delivering resources to the people that has evolved over time. The problem is the externalities, the costs of disposing of these things are not included in the price. If they were included in the price, more of these bottles, and probably all of them, would be recycled. I rarely see a beer bottle lying on the street because people value them because it cuts the price of their next bottle of beer. So I believe in that. Whether that's going to impose a deposit tax on the manufacturer or a tax on each individual, and in the general taxation with money going back to getting rid of these things, I think the best bet is that the consumer should turn in these bottles and receive money, 10 cents for every bottle they return in. Then they'd understand the value of recycling and keeping these things out of the environment. Until then,
Okay.
we're all little children throwing things away because we can.
Okay, thank you there, Al, well said.
Thank you.
Now, I'm first of all going to say that I'm delighted that our opponents here, Mario, have conceded half of our argument before we even start here. They are dangerous and they do need to be regulated. So now we'll just go to the second half of the argument. Should they be merely taxed with that rebate, or should they be outright banned? Well, I am very sorry that in the course of this debate, the core truth of the fact that our oceans, the foundation of life on this planet, is being irremediably polluted by these products. And the only really responsible way to control them is to no longer manufacture them. And we're not talking about a 2-year timeline or a 5 or 10-year timeline. We're talking about a timeline of centuries. Human behavior isn't going to change. No, but let's regulate these things out of existence and we'll find something else that is much less damaging to the environment. Okay. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Make water bottles made of gold. Nobody throw it away.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking.
Okay, well, we're done there. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for a very lively debate. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, it's never black and white in reality, I guess, except in this particular case where, indeed, I mean, the debate's finished. So now let's just admit that single-use water bottles shouldn't be there.
No, never admit.
Do we have a topic set up for next week?
Plastic cup, okay?
Yes, we do.
What's our topic for next week there, Al?
The topic is, be it resolved. People should be, vaccination of people for COVID-19 should be made mandatory. Of course, we'll
Mandatory.
refine that definition for the next debate,
Yeah.
but the debate will be whether or not we should be required to vaccinate.
Okay, well, that sounds interesting. Mandatory vaccines. Well, let's see how that goes. Anyway, thank you very much, viewers. We greatly appreciated this. We are Be It Resolved. We've enjoyed bringing this to you, and we look forward to next week's. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening, and please subscribe so you do not miss another episode. Thank you.